Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Energy Humanities Workshop. We're pretty excited to share this website project with you. It's something we built as part of our master's program, and we hope it offers a fresh perspective on how you think about energy.
Honestly, when we first started this, I didn't realize just how much there is to rethink about energy outside of the usual science talk. The idea was to make everything approachable, so anyone could navigate through these ideas step by step.
Exactly. That's why we broke the site down into 4 main sections. I mean, nothing's worse than landing on a site and not knowing where to begin. We wanted each part to have a clear purpose.
For sure, and we tried to keep it as user-friendly as possible. The menu at the top is your best friend here, honestly. Plus, every section flows into the next, so you're not left wondering what to do next or where to click.
So let's give folks a quick tour. First stop, the resources section. This is basically our digital library, packed with the articles, books, and media we'll be working with. We wanted everything in one spot so you never have to hunt around.
And then comes the heart of the site, the Energy Humanities section. Here's where we really dig into the ideas behind the project. We actually use an analogy to help explain big concepts like eco-criticism and petroculture, just to make things less intimidating.
That actually reminds me, after you've wrapped your head around the theory, the Teaching the Trade section lets you see all that in action. We get hands-on with digital arts and storytelling. And there's even a teaching activity you can try out in your own classroom.
And wrapping it up is my favorite part, the reflections section. That's where you can peek behind the curtain, see our own sample work, read our thoughts, and even take a quiz to share your perspective. It's super interactive, so you're part of the conversation, not just reading passively.
So whether you're a student, a teacher, or just curious, the site's designed to guide you through every step. Here's where things get interesting, the resources page. If you're listening along, this is where you'll want to click next.
Jumping into this section always feels like opening a treasure chest to me. There's such a variety. Books, articles, even a podcast episode that helped shape how we put this project together.
Exactly. And we really wanted to make sure these weren't just thrown in for the sake of it. Each one brings a different angle to the big question of energy and culture. Should we start with that book from the Petroculture's research group?
Let's do it. So, After Oil isn't your typical tech-forward energy read. It argues pretty passionately, actually, that changing energy systems is as much about shifting our collective mindset as it is about new gadgets or fuels. I love how they stress the role of the arts and humanities in that shift.
And I think that point often gets lost, right? We hear about solar panels and electric cars, but rarely about how stories or art can push cultural change. That actually reminds me, did you get a chance to revisit the podcast episode by Imre Seaman that's linked here?
Oh, definitely. Seaman's take on petroculture is pretty eye-opening. He basically says our daily lives are so entangled with oil, we hardly notice it. I found his argument about academics needing to break out of their bubbles and speak to wider audiences especially timely.
That's so true. And it really connects with the next reading, Amitav Ghosh's Petrofiction. What struck me is how Ghosh asks why modern novels seem to sidestep oil entirely. Almost like there's a creative block when it comes to writing about energy.
Exactly. And Ghosh doesn't let literature off the hook. He suggests that oil is so strange and elusive that it just doesn't fit into the way we usually tell stories. It made me rethink how energy issues show up or don't show up in everyday culture.
Yeah, and speaking of how energy shapes our lives, the Casey Williams site pulls these threads together. His take on the energy humanities really sets the stage for understanding not just the science, but the deeper social and ethical stakes in the energy transition.
No kidding. The idea that we need to understand our fossil-fueled world on a cultural level before we can change it feels both daunting and exciting.
It's not just about solar panels or oil rigs, right?
Exactly. It's about so much more. The Energy Humanities digs deep into how energy, whether it's fossil fuels or renewables, intertwines with our stories, identities, and even daily routines. It asks, what does energy actually mean to us as a culture? That's the stuff you don't always get in a science textbook.
And honestly, those big picture questions are what drew me in. Like, sure, we need to know the nuts and bolts of energy, but what about the way it shapes our politics or even our sense of self? That's pretty wild when you think about it.
For sure. I mean, who we are and how we live are so wrapped up in energy systems. Once you start noticing it, you can't stop seeing the fingerprints of oil, gas, and electricity on just about everything from what we eat to how we get around.
Building on that, you'll notice a big image with 3 panels as you scroll down: the trade, the tool, and the task. It's like the backbone of this whole approach. So, what's up with calling it a trade?
It's kind of clever, actually. The trade means the energy humanities itself is like a skilled craft, like being an electrician or a carpenter. But for analyzing our energy culture, it's about honing a way of thinking that helps us imagine new futures, not just fixing stuff that's broken.
That makes sense. Almost like you need the right training to even spot what's going on under the surface. And it gives artists and scholars a job to do in all this, which I love.
Absolutely. Instead of just observing, the field encourages you to actually shape the conversation, and maybe even what comes next. It's like, don't just be a bystander. Pick up your toolkit and get to work.
Now, the analogy's second panel is the tool eco-criticism. Let's get into what makes eco-criticism more than just a fancy academic term. What's it actually do for us?
What's cool about eco-criticism is that it gives us a way to pick apart the stories and art around us and see how they shape our relationship with the environment. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses suddenly. That landscape painting or blockbuster movie looks completely different.
Yeah, and it's not just about pointing out problems, either. It's about figuring out how creative works can actually nudge people toward real change. I love that they describe it as a tool that gets the job done, sounds hands-on.
Totally. And the point is to make our analysis actionable. If our criticism just stays in a journal and never reaches activists or policymakers, it kind of misses the point, right?
So, when you land on the eco-criticism page, it splits the tool into 3 parts. First up, critiquing cultural products. How does that work, day to day?
Let's say you're watching a movie set on an oil field. Are they just using the oil scenery for drama? Or are they actually saying something about our dependence on fossil fuels? That's where eco-criticism steps in. It asks the tough questions most folks skip over.
And then comes connecting theory to reality. That's always the tricky bit. How do you actually pull that off without losing people in jargon?
You've got to ground it in what's happening now. If there's a protest about a new pipeline, you can apply a theory about energy myths directly to that struggle. It's about making abstract ideas concrete.
I love that the third step is producing actionable knowledge. Otherwise, it all just stays in the classroom, right?
Exactly. For instance, if you write about how companies greenwash their image, and that helps activists spot those tactics suddenly, your research is making waves. It's empowering people to do something, not just debate endlessly.
And honestly, that kind of impact is what keeps this field alive. You need to see results, not just theory for theory's sake.
Couldn't agree more. It always feels like a win when people take what you found and actually use it to push for environmental changes or policy updates.
That brings us to the third panel of the analogy, the task petroculture. This is the big challenge, right?
Petroculture is such a loaded term. It means we're living in an oil society through and through. Not just driving cars, but building our dreams, fears, and even pop culture around oil. It's everywhere, even when we don't think about it.
That's a bit unsettling, honestly. It's not just about energy bills. It's about how deeply oil shapes our habits and beliefs. I never really noticed it until I started looking for the sign.
Same here. Once you start seeing it, you realize how much our cities, economies, and even the stories we tell buy into this petroculture mindset.
Something that stuck out to me is how often oil is just part of the scenery in popular culture. Like in those old TV shows, what does that actually mean for the conversation about energy?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Shows like Dallas's turn oil into a symbol of power or drama, but they rarely dig into what oil really costs us. It's just a backdrop, not the main story.
And then you get movies where oil is the setup for some big spectacle, but there's no mention of pollution or the political mess behind it. It almost lets us ignore the real stakes.
Yeah, those shallow depictions let us off the hook. They make oil seem neutral or even glamorous, when the truth is way more complicated and, honestly, uncomfortable.
On the flip side, I love when art and literature don't shy away from the hard stuff. What's the difference when storytellers actually treat oil as a main character, not just a prop?
That's where things get powerful. Something like the After Oil Project really digs in, arguing that modernity, the world as we know it, depends completely on these hidden energy flows. It's not just background noise, it's the baseline of our whole society.
It challenges us, right? Suddenly, we have to ask, what happens if that baseline stops? What does our culture even look like without oil humming along in the background?
Exactly. And that's when the questions get urgent. How can we even imagine life after petroculture when it's shaped almost everything we see, touch, or dream about?
That actually reminds me the website makes a big point that switching energy systems isn't enough. What's it mean to transform petroculture itself?
It's a huge ask. Even if we all switch to solar tomorrow, the culture, the habits, and stories we built around oil wouldn't change overnight. We've got to rethink everything from our urban design to the way we tell stories and make art.
So, really, the energy transition is about reimagining our values and dreams, not just plugging in new technology.
Absolutely. It's about building a future that isn't haunted by old energy assumptions. And that's why the humanities matter. We need them to dream up something new.
After seeing how all these pieces fit together, I'm curious, how do we actually teach this trade? What's next after wrapping our heads around the concepts?
That's where things get practical. In the next section, Teaching the Trade, they show how to use these concepts in real classrooms or workshops. It's not just academic, it's about giving people the tools to analyze, critique, and eventually rethink the world they live in.
And maybe even inspire a few folks to become energy storytellers themselves.
Exactly. Passing on the toolkit is the only way to build momentum for real change. It's a ripple effect. One great conversation can lead to a dozen new perspectives.
Before we close out, I have to say, digging into these frameworks really makes me rethink what it means to be part of an energy society. It's not just about what we use, but how we see ourselves.
That's such a good point. These theories aren't just academic puzzles, they're tools for self-reflection and social change. The more we understand the roots of petroculture, the better we can shape whatever comes next.
And for anyone listening, that's an open invitation. Start spotting the energy stories around you, and maybe imagine how they could be different.
Who knows? Maybe the next big energy breakthrough won't be a new gadget, but a new way of telling our story.
Now it's time to put all that theory into action, right? Can you walk us through how to get started on the Teaching the Trade section of the site?
Sure. This is where things get really interesting. The Teaching the Trade page is like your workshop. It's where you take those big ideas and actually use them. We focus on two main types of media here: storytelling and digital art. The big question is always, does a piece skim the surface, or does it dig in and analyze deeply? And by the end, there's a creative activity to help all these ideas really stick.
Great. I love that we're moving from just talking about energy to actually looking at how these concepts play out in the real world. Let's dive in. Should we start with storytelling?
Absolutely, storytelling is such a powerful way to see how petroculture shapes lives and landscapes. Click on the storytelling link, and we'll jump right in.
So first up for deep storytelling is Cities of Salt by Abdurrahman Munif. For anyone unfamiliar, what's the short version of the story?
Picture an Arabian oasis in the 1930s, and then watch it transform when American oil prospectors arrive. Munif's novel walks us through how traditional ways of life unravel as oil, money, and foreign interests take over. It's not just about getting rich, it's about everything changing, often painfully.
That sounds intense. What sets this apart is a deep analysis, not just another drama set in an oil town.
Munif doesn't just use oil as a flashy background. He shows the hidden costs families uprooted, power structures upended, the land itself being transformed. It's a deep dive into how a single resource can reshape an entire culture and make invisible struggles visible. It's the opposite of a simple rags to riches tale.
Following that, let's talk about Ducks. 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton. What's the basic premise here?
This one's pretty personal. Kate Beaton moves to the Alberta oil sands just to pay off student debt. The graphic novel follows her daily grind, the isolation, and what it's actually like to work in those rough, remote camps.
So, why is this considered a deep piece rather than just another memoir?
Beaton really pulls back the curtain. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. There's exhaustion, environmental harm, and social tension. By centering real people and their struggles, Ducks connects the dots between big industry and real lives. Suddenly, petroculture isn't some distant concept. It's right there in the grit and heartbreak of everyday work.
Now for the flip side, superficial narratives. Let's start with the film Giant. What's the movie about at its core?
It's a sprawling Texas drama, 3 generations, lots of family feuds, ranching, and eventually, a massive oil windfall. The story follows the Benedict family as they become rich off oil, with all the personal ups and downs that come with it.
Does Giant really dig into oil's impacts? Or does it use oil more as set dressing?
The latter, for sure. Oil is basically just a shortcut for wealth and drama in this film. There's no real questioning of what oil means for the environment or society. The focus stays on individual ambition and rivalry. It's a perfect example of using petroculture as a stage prop, not a subject.
Next up is Deepwater Horizon. Most people remember this as a big-budget disaster film, but what's its actual storyline?
It dramatizes the real-life explosion and oil spill on the Deepwater Horizon rig in 2010. The movie hones in on the crew's fight for survival during the catastrophe. Lots of suspense, action, and chaos.
So, does it use this disaster for more than just thrills?
Not really. While it's definitely gripping, it sidesteps deeper questions. Instead of exploring why the disaster happened, like corporate decisions or environmental fallout, it sticks to the spectacle. There's barely a nod to the bigger systems at play. It entertains, but it doesn't probe.
Switching gears a bit, let's head over to the digital art section. How do visual works help us better understand petroculture?
Visuals cut straight to the gut, you know? Sometimes a single image can make the urgency of energy issues hit home in a way that pages of text can't. We use our eco-critical tool to dig into what these artworks and campaigns are really saying or not saying about oil and society.
That actually makes me think sometimes art can sneak past our defenses and make us feel things without us even realizing. Let's check out some examples. First, deep analysis piece. The energy requested to write these words is not infinite by Ernst Logar. What's happening in this artwork?
Logar literally uses crude oil as his ink, writing and drawing directly with it on paper. The message is embedded literally in oil. It's a stark reminder that even our words and ideas are powered by energy that isn't limitless.
So the art isn't just about oil, it is oil. That's a wild way to make the invisible visible.
Exactly. You can't look away from the substance itself. The artwork forces you to confront where our energy comes from and who's paying the price, socially and politically. It turns an abstract idea into something you can't ignore.
Now for Banksy's crude oil, Vetriano. What's the visual here, and how does it twist our expectations?
Banksy takes Jack Vetriano's famous beach painting and drops in figures in hazmat suits, cleaning up a crude oil spill. The romantic, carefree vibe is totally upended by this jarring addition.
That's such a clever way to make us re-examine what we take for granted. How does it count as deep analysis?
It's pure satire. By corrupting a comforting scene, Banksy forces us to see the pollution lurking beneath our leisure. He's calling out corporate irresponsibility, reminding us that the true cost of petroculture often gets whitewashed or ignored.
On to the superficial side. Let's talk about the Enbridge Life Takes Energy campaign. What images are they using?
These ads are all about warm, happy snapshots, families outdoors, friends laughing, people hiking. It's slick marketing, connecting the good stuff in life to the energy Enbridge provides, without ever saying much about what kind of energy or its impact.
So it's like they're selling a feeling, not a conversation about responsibility.
Exactly. It's classic greenwashing, turning a complex issue into a fuzzy, feel-good vibe. There's no mention of environmental costs, just the message that energy equals happiness, period.
And then there's the iconic Crying Indian ad from the 1970s. Can you walk us through what viewers actually see in that ad?
A Native American man paddles through polluted waters, then stands on the roadside as a car throws trash at his feet. He sheds a single, dramatic tear. The message is, pollution is the result of individual carelessness.
It's so memorable, but it's sneaky. What's the underlying problem with that narrative?
It totally shifts responsibility away from corporations and policy, making regular folks feel guilty while the real polluters escape scrutiny. It's a textbook case of greenwashing, emotionally powerful, but ultimately misleading.
Now, after all these stories and images, we land on the creative activity. What exactly is petroculture personified?
This is where you get to step into the shoes, or, I guess, the plastic shell of something, or someone shaped by the oil industry. Maybe you're an oil rig, a plastic bottle, a duck in an oil slick, or even a melting glacier. You write a short poem from that perspective. Then create an AI-generated image to go with it.
That honestly sounds like a great way to tie together everything we've been talking about, making the abstract feel personal.
Exactly. It lets you wrestle with the difference between deep and superficial analysis firsthand. Are you just describing, or are you exploring the consequences, the connections, the feelings? That's the big challenge and the fun part.
It feels like these exercises push us to look at energy and petroculture from every angle. What's next once someone completes the teaching activity?
The next segment takes us to the reflections page. It's a chance to look back at everything you've learned and created, connecting personal insights to the bigger picture. We'll talk about how these activities can shift your perspective and maybe even your daily choices.
I'm looking forward to that. These moments of reflection really help all this heavy stuff settle in. Thanks for walking us through the nuts and bolts today.
It was a pleasure. Can't wait to hear what creative perspectives people come up with. See you in the final segment.
Hello everyone, my name is Kiefer. So alongside Emily and Adrian, my group was tasked with creating content for week 3, which covers arts, humanities, and energy education. Honestly, when our group was assigned to the first week, I was pretty happy to get it out to the way before the semester got busy. But then when I saw the topic that we were assigned, this quickly turned into slight worry. I've been a science and math student and then teacher for my entire life, so the arts and humanities were honestly a little bit out of my comfort zone. Reading through the material didn't help very much. It was extremely interesting, but I just couldn't wrap my head around the relationships between the concepts being mentioned. But after the first discussion, really, with my group, I think like the different opinions and perspectives that we all had through like the where we lived and the cultural exposure was truly fundamental in grasping like the holistic concept. After this conversation, we quickly developed the trade tool task analogy, and that really provided like the framework for the remainder of the website. My favorite part of this assignment involved both storytelling, well, finding both the media for storytelling and the digital media. It was eye-opening to relook at content that you previously watched, like movies, especially Deepwater Horizon, and using that eco-critical lens to analyze it a little different. I truly felt like I was betrayed by the superficial content creators, as I was totally absorbed by their narratives, and then even think about how they were silencing the true implications of the industry. Like Deepwater Horizon, I mean, that was one of my favorite shows, but now looking back on it and seeing how they just focused on this like Mark Wahlberg and him being this hero, and that took away from what that oil spill actually did to the Gulf of Mexico was insane. Anyway, so in terms of the media, we decided to use throughout the website the images that you find, they were all generated by the team, and the idea was that we wanted to we wanted it to be thought-provoking from the jump. We wanted people to start to naturally utilize their eco-critical lenses before they even knew what eco-criticism was. And I hope this is really what you all experienced. In terms of the podcast, the reality is the wildly different time zones that we're all in made it difficult for us to lock in a mutual time that we could meet on a call. So this way, what it did is it allowed us to like type up our scripts and then create a fluid audio that would truly allow the user to navigate the website easily. And it felt a little less formal, you know, as opposed to us, the website structure so methodological. I think the podcast made it more conversational, which is exactly the idea of using softer art and culture techniques to bring across complicated concepts such as energy studies. Lastly, in terms of how I can use this in my classroom, my students are always quick to skip the theory. So this analogy that we developed is perfect for them. It's short, memorable, and it allows them to take a complex idea without losing interest in the topic before we jumped into the activity. Lastly, I had a great time with the teaching activity. My home country's relationship with oil extends from our economy to our culture, and the steel pan is really the ideal way to express this. Starting off as a tool within the industry to store the gold, well, the black gold, then to a musical instrument to emancipate the oppressed. I think this it's just a great activity to bring everything together. So, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I really hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to take part in the quiz.
Hi everyone. In this assignment, our group focused on energy humanities, specifically on the themes of petrocultures, eco-criticism, and the role of digital art and storytelling in shaping how we understand energy. We compared superficial narratives that use oil as a backdrop with deeper works that highlight how oil truly defines culture, politics, and daily life. For me, this was more than an academic exercise. Living here in Mongolia, I see firsthand how coal and external energy dependence affects survival, infrastructure, and just daily lifestyle habits. The readings reminded me of how important it is for me personally to help my students make these connections, not just as abstract theories, but as part of their lived realities. For the teaching activity our group created to engage all of you, I created a comic strip and poem tracing the story of oil across Iran and Canada. The assignment asked for you all to focus on an object or environmental element. In my story, petroculture itself was the object. Please pardon any inaccuracies, specifically with the flags. I was using Dolly for the first time and I ran out of credits. I hope the message came across though. Anyways, the process helped me reflect on how not only objects, but also people, experiences, policies, and politics are shaped by petroculture. It reinforced for me that energy literacy must include culture and personal stories, not just statistics. As an educator, I believe inquiry-based learning is probably the best way to scaffold students towards these insights. Back in Module 2, we learned about systems thinking and looking at the whole picture rather than a specific element. I personally don't agree with beginning instruction directly with systems thinking, just from a pedagogical point of view, and that is because I see it as operating at a much higher level of Bloom's taxonomy, where students are analyzing, evaluating, and creating. But I do believe we can scaffold students toward it by starting with personal questions, guiding them into analysis, and eventually helping them see patterns and systems by framing it step by step. Here in Mongolia, this feels urgent. My students need to see how their coal-dependent winters connect to global transitions and debates, and how they too can imagine a different future. That's it for my reflection, and thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing how you all come up with your stories through poetry and AI imagery. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Hello, my name is Emily, and here's my self-reflection. When we talk about energy literacy, most people think that science or technology and policy are the more important aspects, but I think humanities are just as important because it shows us that energy is not just about machines or systems, but the meaning and the cultures and the stories that we tell. The theories from environmental humanities show us the way we imagine it. Energy, the metaphors, art, music, the narratives, they shape how our societies see it and the responsibility we hold with it. And that's why I think that they matter. And we can see this throughout various forms of media, film, lit, visual arts, and music. They reflect how we see and we frame the world. And they open our eyes to the lives and experiences that we might not be able to see on a daily from other communities who live near or far or have no impact at all from anything related to fossil fuels. Those stories can show us lots of different stories and bring attention to it and show, especially for people like me who are teachers, show my students kind of how those stories can be seen in a classroom and have students hear the voices of people who have been directly impacted by fossil fuels. It makes it a little bit more real for them. It's no longer just like this, oh, let's look at what this certain thing is. It shows them that it has a real impact for real people. So if I were to address how energy literacy in humanities is about learning how to read the world a little bit differently, connecting the art and culture and media to the stories in the systems in the people's lives around us, and they kind of shape who we are and kind of help us as people and me personally as educators to bring young people into a more present and thoughtful way to imagine and build potentially a different kind of future. And I think that's important. Thank you.
I can hardly believe we've reached the end of our guided tour through the Energy Humanities Workshop website. We've unraveled everything from those big picture concepts to putting ideas into practice. How are you feeling after all that?
It's honestly been a whirlwind. Exploring the site made me realize just how much perspective the humanities bring to energy issues. There's a lot more nuance than I expected. Seeing how the site ties together theory with real-life examples really stuck with me.
Totally agree. The way they bridge the abstract and the practical gives this content so much texture. Out of everything we clicked through, was there a page or feature that really surprised you?
Funny you ask, because the reflections page caught me off guard in the best way. Watching the site creators Kiefer, Adrian, and Emily share their own reactions and stories about the project made the whole thing feel a lot more personal. It's not every day you get to hear the behind-the-scenes feelings.
Absolutely. There's something special about seeing the people behind a resource open up about their process. And their sample responses to the teaching activity really help, don't you think? It's like getting a sneak peek at how experts would tackle those assignments.
That's so true. Their answers weren't just examples. They showed different ways to think about the same prompt, which actually made me want to try the activity myself. Plus, that quiz at the end is a clever touch. It's not just a test, but a way to join the bigger conversation.
Right. And I love that after submitting your answer, you get to see what others have said. It's almost like having a mini forum right there, connecting you with people who are all wrestling with the same question.
And on that note, I really encourage anyone listening or browsing the site to dive into those discussions. Sometimes the best insights come from seeing how someone else approaches a problem.